Cloud. Bom dia para quem é de bom dia, boa noite para quem é da boa noite, 93 para quem é de 93. Hoje a gente vai falar sobre magia e evocação e a parte mais séria do Tritêmios, de magia salomônica, evocação, e a gente está com um cara que é um dos maiores especialistas disso no mundo. Só que essa entrevista vai ser feita em inglês, então você precisa vir aqui e colocar subtitles e depois translate to português. E aí você vai ter as legendas e vai conseguir entender o que a gente fala. And now I am changing to English. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us in this podcast. We are in the main wizard's Boteco, and I am with Robson from Japan. Hello, Robson.
Yo gozaimasu, konnichiwa, konbawa. If you see this on YouTube on another time, I am very anxious to talk by Frater Chassan, and wow, I am a fan of this man and the big magician in the world, in my opinion.
And today I'm with Henrique Monteiro too. We have interviewed him about the Solomonic magic, and he will help me making the complicated questions. I will ask the basic ones, and then he will ask the more complicated. Welcome, Henrique.
Thank you.
And from mortesubita.com, Thiago Tamosauskas.
Hi guys, it's a privilege to be here today to learn from the authority in the subject. I think it's going to be great.
And last but not least, Thales Azevedo.
Hello, everybody. It's a great honor to be here with this interview with Frater Ashen, and I believe that everybody will love this.
Well, Frater Ashen, he's a practicing occultist and Grimoire traditionalist who has been involved in traditional forms of Western ceremonial magic for over 14 years. His passion centers on closely reproducing experiments from the Solomonic magical texts and judging their effectiveness for himself. The approach he takes to such undertakings is a serious immersion and interaction of traditional forms of magical ritual and spirit communication. His aim is to recreate experiments from magical texts as closely as he's able before altering any content. I'd like to make a better introduction for him. Henrique, could you please do the honors?
Thank you. Yes, Frater Ashen, as far as my knowledge goes, is, if not the most experienced Solomonic operator in the, at least publicly in the world that I know, then he's certainly one of the top practical operators of the Solomonic tradition in the world. This is a man who not only is not an academic, he's a true practitioner of the arts. And as far as I know, there could be more. As far as I know, he has a good mastery of the system of Trithemius for angelic evocation. The traditional approach to the Goetia, the Arbatel of magic, the Ars Almadel, and also he knows how to build and consecrate and make functional pentacles from the key of Solomon. So this is a very rare opportunity to speak to a very experienced, real Solomonic magician.
Thank you, Henrique, and welcome, Frater Ashen.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to converse with you all, and especially across countries and cultures and language. It's a real honor to be able to speak with you today. So thank you for having me.
Well, we have all the honor to be here talking to you. The first question that we always ask to our guests is about your history. How did you get to talk to spirits? Brazil is a very Catholical country. So we always said, oh, when you're young, you have to go to the church and have the body of Christ and have wine and things like that. How did you get from that to talk to angels? What's your story?
Well, it kind of began. I grew up Protestant. I actually wasn't very familiar with Catholicism and a lot of the Catholic traditions, at least in my family and place where I grew up. But we had a lot of paranormal experiences. My family, for whatever reason, on both sides of my mother and my father's side, things would happen. We would see things, or parents would have premonitions. And I grew up where these happenings seemed to concentrate and become more frequent the older I got. I moved in the United States from California to Colorado. And for whatever reason, when we moved there and were surrounded by more nature, we had more things happen, and some were frightening. Some would disturb the whole family, and the whole family would see them. Sometimes if we had friends over, they would witness and see things. So my interest in magic, besides just a calling, was also seeking to understand why these things were occurring. We did go to church, even though we were Methodists, and we would talk to the pastors and such, but they would say to pray and various things, but they didn't seem to know much about what to do when we would have these experiences. So magic was something that I became interested in doing, and it seemed like I had a knack for it, because I would read something out of a book and I would try to replicate it or do what the book said, and I would be able to make things happen. Things would occur. And so that increased my interests. As far as jumping to angels, it was a slow process, and I became disenchanted with the Christian tradition for quite a time. There's a lot of things that it wasn't able to answer for me, and I was more interested in various religions and pagan beliefs. And when I was in college, I studied comparative religious philosophy and cultural anthropology and various philosophies and cultural philosophies of different regions. And it wasn't until I started becoming very interested in the classical books of magic, the grimoires, that I became interested in Catholic magic. The Western civilization, a lot of what we understand as magic, even as it comes into the media, has been filtered through the Catholic Church. They were the learned men of those days and had access to the books. And most of the classical Western magic, as we know it, came through this Catholic religious culture that I was pretty unfamiliar with. So the more that I studied and the more I wanted to learn how to do this type of magic, the more I became interested in Catholicism and the magic and the mystical practice, the liturgy behind it, and this sort of thing. So I was resistant, but I'm the kind of person that if it says to do something a certain way within a book of magic, I try to understand why and how it was done. And most of especially the Solomonic grimoire books that we have, come to us with very heavy understanding of Catholic liturgy, and the people that practice them directly, most of the time, as we know it, were probably clergy. They were ordained in one of the minor or major holy orders. And so things like making holy water, investments, and these sort of things that are all throughout our magical texts, or understand through those lenses. So I became interested in doing this, and the more that I started to practice this type of magic, I became involved in Catholicism, learning in traditional Roman Catholic, but eventually becoming ordained and going through Gnostic Catholic churches that, especially nowadays, are more open and understanding, embracing of mystical traditions and practices.
All right. How was the first time that a spirit talked back? Because we all talk to spirits, but they never answered. How was the first feeling when a spirit finally talks back to you?
Well, I had grown up and I had seen ghosts. I've had encounters with spirits, and grew up experiencing many things in the forests, and things would happen in the house. So I knew spirits existed, but it was never something I could control, or sometimes they wouldn't say anything, or I didn't know what to do because it would be frightening, or I wouldn't understand what was going on. But my very first encounter, especially with magic and seeing, in this case, an angel, was in the grimoire known as the Lemegeton, which has the Goetia, but also an art called Ars Almadel, which is this wax table. It's an altar, and has to do with angels of different altitudes, chorus, or corresponding with seasons. And it was actually after having a very difficult failure. I was very interested in Goetia for a long time, and I tried some minor experiments, and I saw some misty shapes, and I knew something was happening, but I still didn't see or hear anything very concretely that I could communicate with. But the first time that the angel's face appeared in the crystal of the Almadel, I was shocked because it was after a failure and I was having a lot of doubts. But this face appeared, and I looked away and I looked back, and it was still there. And the light was increased, and this whole feeling of being it was in an enclosure of tapestries where it was all like one white color. But that whole feeling of being in that space was overwhelming, and I started to cry. Tears were going down my face, and I was kind of in this state of awe because I knew what I was seeing. I could close my eyes, I could look away, it was still there. And then when I heard the voice of it being able to speak to me, I still compare it to there's nothing else like it in the experience of being alive and being a human on this world, when you're encountering something that is truly spiritual and truly unique. Doubts and all kinds of things just fall away, and you're kind of immersed in what's going on in this experience. And this angel was there, and very specifically there to help me on this path of developing my senses, my lifestyle, my being, in order to continue down this practice. And I didn't know why. I don't know why me. I think other people had tried this experiment before, and I had tried other experiments before that didn't really get these kind of results. But it happened, and it was just incredible to be able to see and to experience something like that. Yeah, there's not really anything else to compare it to. It's just overwhelming and kind of a very immersive experience.
May I have a question? In this first appearance, how do you have this? How are you sure that it was an angel and not something else?
Yeah, and in that first experience, I didn't even question it at first. I kind of forgot, because there's a list of, do you swear by God that you are this such and such angel? And I would begin to do that. But the first time it happened, I was so overwhelmed that, if I'm being honest, I was convinced, because my whole being told me that what I was seeing, what I was experiencing was something that was holy, was something that was true, and was something that was there to help me. And it beyond, before it even spoke, I knew this, and it's like my whole being knew this. And I don't know how, I don't know why, but I as a magician, even though I try to do things scientifically and go through the steps, I trust my senses when something's telling me that something's there. And I've encountered negative and things that I've had to be cautious of, but there's definitely a distinct feeling with the angelic beings, sometimes it's overwhelming and it's frightening in a different sense. Not like they're there to hurt you, not that they're there to do something harmful, but that it's a certain kind of power, it's a certain kind of intelligence that is foreign. It's something that you're not used to communicating with, you're not used to being in concentrated presence of, and your mind, your body, everything's telling you that, you know, this is not a normal thing. This is overwhelming. So it is difficult. But when I saw that face, especially for the Almadel the first time, all I can say is that everything that I was convinced of what I was seeing and what I was hearing. I didn't have any doubt whatsoever, but and I couldn't explain. It's just everything told me so in my mind and my body and my heart, so to speak.
No wonder that famous phrase, and do not be afraid.
Yeah, I've been afraid.
The first encounters with these beings, they are awesome because they kind of talk to us like in package of informations. I know what you're saying, because you can't explain with words, because every single cell of your body is pumped by energy and by the presence of these beings. So I totally get you, because you want to tell everybody that is amazing, but you don't have the words to tell that.
Exactly.
I have a question that Robson said, is of all these systems, where to start? I guess someone who's watching this podcast, and then he said, okay, I want to talk to angels too. How can I start?
It's a long process, and I've had many people come to me with that same question. And I do tell people that even if, I mean, it sounds interesting, but it's not for everyone, especially Solomonic magic. It's not for everyone. And Hinigi's here, but I use him as an example. I've used him so many times because I think he's an excellent example about what it takes to be able to do, you know, this type of magic. We all start out with this imagining of what it's going to be like, and it never quite matches the imagination. And it takes, especially Solomonic work, it takes a lot of dedication. Like he and I worked, I'm trying to remember the length of time, but I think Aniki he was even more dedicated and did things on the proper hour and the time, and was very meticulous with each of the materials and memorizing the conjurations and getting his vestments in order. And it still didn't work. It was the first time. And he was like, why didn't it work? Why didn't I was able to see? And for me to say, I don't know, I'm not sure what happened at first, but let's go back over this and let's see, you know, what things we might have missed or what things might work differently for you, because I didn't have an answer for him. And even the second and the third time, and in most people, especially in our day and age, you know, something doesn't work the first few times. They're like, it's either not real or it's not for me, or maybe I'm just not meant to do this. But he was one of those ones that he stuck with it. And, you know, he started having to think about it in a different way and connect to the system in a very specific way for him. But eventually things started to break loose. And I do tell people now that it's not going to be, there's no perfect magic book. There's no perfect grimoire that has all the answers. There's no magical system that is going to guarantee that you're going to be able to see and speak with angels. I think it really depends on the person, their dedication, and honestly, when the angels and these beings start to see, okay, this person is going to be allowed to be able to do this at this point and going to start making these breakthroughs. I think there's purpose behind it besides just following certain recipes. following magical texts. There's something else there that I think is required, and determination and the proper mindset to persevere even when you're not getting results, I think is one of the biggest ones.
Did you talk about the question of the times and about the materials? And we know that the Salamanic magic is very well dependent from the magical tools, with very specific rules about how to create these magical tools. So my question is, do you believe that these instructions is must be requirement or should be requirement? Or asking another way, do you believe that for those who are starting, they may exchange the material, they may do some changes in the instructions about how to create their own magical tools and about the time, magical times, etc.?
Yeah, this is a big question that I get often. And from my experience, the way that I understand a lot of how this magic works is through developing a system of correspondences. All Western magic, if not a lot of the Eastern, is built upon correspondences, something relating to this over here. All of the pillars, astrology and such, are about resonance and thinking about frequencies, something resonating with something else. So if we're talking about the tools, I often tell people that if they're interested in Solomonic magic and they read, okay, my wand should be made of hazel and cut on the first of the day on Wednesday. That's neat. I think I know what it means. It's related to Mercury, but I don't have hazel trees and I don't really need that. So I'm just going to get this stick and this will be my magical wand. I caution a lot of people from that because, for one, I haven't seen excellent results from that. I've never seen anybody have the kind of experiences I've had, that Nikki had, and some of the other people that I've worked with, just saying, I'm going to use a carved kitchen wooden spoon and it's just as powerful as the ebony wand. Working with these ingredients, these tools, there's occult virtue in magical process, and occult being mean that it's hidden. We don't quite understand what it all means, what it entails, until we do it and until we use it and until we experiment with it to understand exactly why it's made the way it is and how it works the way it is. There's a lot of intellectuals and scholars that break things down and they try to discuss it without ever doing it, and there's some things missing there. So my stance on it remains the same, even though I've changed and some of my processes have changed since I began. But beginning to develop a resonance and working with tools, working with materials that classically adhere to various occult virtues, occult powers, and meanings is going to develop the abilities of the magician. And especially as the tools are used, and if they're used in the right and correct context, they're going to build a rapport. Objects most certainly are endowed with occult virtues and magical properties when they're applied specifically. Taking that away, if we break down the entire system, especially as Catholicism relates to it. So this is why the Catholics relate the way that they consecrate various things. And even if we're talking about the Eucharist, these same rules, these same spiritual virtues are directly applied to magical workings to give them their authority, to give them their purpose beyond being base and gross materials. So this philosophy all works together to make this magic functional. Are they essential to talk to spirits? No. Angels and spirits, different people, different cultures, different magical systems. You can speak with them. That's not what I'm saying, and I've never said that. They've appeared in different ways. They can talk to you in different ways. But doing magic in the Solomonic context, these various things are important because they create the structure for which the magician exchanges and works with the spirits, with the angels, with the demons, and causing changes within their world without things going awry. But it's never, it's not even quite said in the grimoires that that is the only way that such spirits could ever be contacted. So it is a structure, it is a method. The tools are effectual if done and made correctly, but it's not the only way that it can be done. I've made changes and altered some things the way that I've done, but only after I've made things, tried it, experimented, seen the results, and usually I only change things when the spirits say, try it this way, or now you can do things this way, and now we can speak and work this way. That's how magic is typically done.
It's very lovely that you say that. In Brazil, we have the tradition of Quimbanda. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we do have, it's African based, but to talk to earth spirits and it's kind of Goetian spirits, but they do have formalities, just like the ones you're describing, such as to talk to some entities, you do have to wear a dead man's vest. So you have to pay money to the grave digger, so he'll dig out a suit from a dead man, and then the sorcerer has to wear that in order to achieve and then talk to the spirit. And then he'll give instructions to the following paths. I believe it's more or less the same way that you did. The next question was, what adaptations did you make that worked and which didn't? Can you give us some example?
Which changes?
Yes, which changes. That you say, the book says it's like this, and then you did it and say, okay, I will change it.
So some things, like specifically within the Goetia, that I had to experiment with was some of the timing. It says that some of these spirits, depending on their rank and what they are, that they only appear during certain times of the day, certain times of either the moon waxing, and so on and so forth. Through some of my experiments, some of the things that didn't work for me for whatever reason was I would try to do some of these during specific times, and the spirit didn't show, or it didn't show very well. And these are the ones that were like during the day, even some of the ones that I tried in like really early in the morning, like 4 a.m., 3 and 4 a.m. And for whatever reason, they just didn't appear, even though the grimoire said that they were supposed to according to their rank. But I would summon them at another time, and usually during the evenings and stuff, it always seemed to work better. They would appear better, I could hear them better, and even my scryer and such could see and work with them better. So it seemed to show that something within the translation, or something that was applied maybe through the scribe, I don't know, or maybe even some things have changed with the spirit itself. Those are some of the questions that I try to ask the spirit, and that's something that you're supposed to do anyways, is once you conjure it, even if the book says something, you ask the spirit, when are the best times to speak with you? And the spirit will tell you. And a lot of times it is interesting that sometimes the spirit or the angel will give you different instructions than what is said in the grimoire. And that's never that surprising. And the other practitioners that I've spoken to have voiced similar things through the years, that it doesn't always match the text. As far as the things that I do stick to is when, especially dealing with the angels and the archangels, when a client asks me or hires me to do a specific working for them on their behalf, I've spoken to them a long time that I don't think the entire ritual is necessary. After so many times, you can respectfully call to them in different ways, but I still set up my circle. I set up the pedestal. I have the incense consecrated. And even after speaking with the angel, they mentioned that it's not necessary to go through the entire formalities. I do it because I want to do it, because it's a sign of respect from me to them, to show them that I'm taking this time out. You're an awesome power. And even though we've spoken several times now, I'm doing this out of respect and out of honor for the being and for these angels. I don't know if there's ever a point where I could get so comfortable with them where it just becomes a, just, I don't know, put on the crystal ball and maybe burn some stick incense and do a simple calling. I prefer not to do it that way because of the experiences they've given me, of how they've changed my life. So I take time to do the ritual, even if the ritual isn't necessary to even contact and speak with them now, as a sign of respect and devotion and honor to who they are to me, if that makes sense.
It makes perfectly sense. Henrique?
I'm glad that we've got to the operative questions, and I've got a few regarding the Key of Solomon, specifically the Solomonic Pentacles, right? So this is a very thorough question, okay? It's a basic introductory question for people who do not know about Solomonic Pentacles, and that includes me, okay? So to start, what are the astrological requisites for building and consecrating Solomonic Pentacles from the key? And also, is it necessary to have had previous contact with each of the planetary archangels in order to build and consecrate an effective Solomonic Pentacles? And lastly, let's suppose someone purchases let's say a Jupiter Pentacle from you, Frater. And it's the first time he's ever used a pentacle, okay? So what kind of experience will he go through? What will he feel, and what sort of things are going to happen in his life that he's going to notice that are caused by the pentacle?
All right, good questions. So first and foremost, the pentacles, according to the Key of Solomon, things compiled, the Mathers version that we have is the result of, just like other grimoires, some scribes putting some things together, and the pentacles were included at some point under the auspice of the requisites and the vestments and the practices of which is Goetic and angelic evocation of planetary beings along that scale. So the idea is coming from that one should have contact with these beings and get some sort of familiarization, if not almost basically an initiation within these, I say, planetary spheres, planetary intelligences of moving. I do think that is a requisite to make these pentacles the way that they are intended. It's not a book like the Picatrix, where it is simply sympathetic magic in the making of talismans. The book is an instruction of spirit evocation, leading up to eventually being able to construct pentacles, and even the description of the pentacles themselves, especially the first and the second ones, specifically state of dealing about invoking and working with the spirits of these planets, of the angels of the pentacles in most of the situations. So evocation is implied first and foremost, and the first pentacles being assistants with the beings that work with these talismans. So yes, I do believe that being able to successfully evoke the associated spirits of these pentacles is the first step in properly making these. Now, what I tell people is that the pentacles of the Key of Solomon are, again, they are compounds of the powers of the planets. And when I mean compounding correspondences, First is sure the timing. Yeah, especially in the beginning, try to find the best day and time and alignment, and according to that planet when it's in its best dignity, if possible, go for that. The second is the material. It states specifically, unless you're just using parchment, which it deals with colors, so the key talks about colors, you can use parchment as well. Otherwise, it says to use the metals, that you have lead for Saturn, you have tin for Jupiter, gold for the sun, iron and for Mars, and copper for Venus, mixed alloys or fixed mercury for Mercury, and silver for the moon. That is another correspondence. Then it's going to be, basically it says for the shape, it talks about various shapes. You can do kind of geometrical figures, and it talks about, like in the fourth book, that's relatable, you can do geometric shapes, but the symbols, the sigils, all of the things that are engraved upon that, or again, big aspect of the correspondence that goes into that. And then finally, the consecration itself, of when it's made on its day and hour and everything. For me, the biggest point is evoking the spirit and say, will you imbue this with your essence? It says that if I make this pentacle this way, it can do this for people. Can it do that? If it can, will you consecrate it and make sure that it's effectual, that it works? And if the spirit says yes, then you've got your talisman. Then you've got your talisman that works. And that is, for me, that is the proper way to make them. Now, the interesting thing is, and I love, one of my biggest successes, I would say, in magic, is making these pentacles and sending them to various different peoples, sending them to magicians, sending them to non-magicians, sending them to people who don't even believe in magic or anything, but that agree to get this gift from this person that is ordered through me and been given to them, and see the changes. I've received countless feedback and results of these pentacles and the changes that they've made in people's life. They didn't have to do anything. It just, they were holding on to it and they went about their lives, but things started to happen for them. The changes began to happen that they were looking for, and just incredible things, from healing and overcoming things that they weren't over to somebody who's hasn't had any kind of luck in relationship ever, years and years and years, and they receive the pentacles, and all of a sudden, you know, they find themselves meeting and speaking to this people and making the deep connection, and being able to start a business and finally receive wealth after hitting dead end after dead end and failure after failure, and finally, you know, getting success and having wealth and money come to them. They've been so functional and successful, though, that I've seen some of the downfall where I've had clients that have had so many miraculous things happen, but they buy more pentacles from me and more and more and more and more, and they, you know, and they're wearing all these things and they have all of this energy, and part of the trouble with being a human being, I think, is seeing the success of magic sometimes, but always wanting more and always trying to get more than what you had before, which, especially when mixing different planetary things and things too often, can sometimes backfire and sometimes cause other things when your destiny gets a little bit too manipulated. With magic, there is trouble there too. It's not going to solve all the problems, but the good stories that I tell people, they're like, when I get this, you know, what can I expect? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? I tell them, I don't know. I ask the spirits to empower the pentacles and that they work, but exactly how that is going to work for you, I have no idea. I don't know when exactly, and I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. You know, I'm a magician. I'm not a miracle worker or a psychic that way, and I don't claim to be. But I tell people that you're asking for this, whatever this pentacle represents, you're asking for this in your life. So know that whether you believe it or not, doesn't matter, because things will start to happen. But make sure that what you are wanting is what you're going after, you're actively seeking in life. An example is somebody who is wanting a relationship. They wanted one of my Venus pentacles. I made them one, they sent them, they're like, I'm not having any luck. I'm like, I was surprised. I'm like, that's weird. These have been working. And he's like, yeah, I don't think it works. I'm like, well, what are you doing? They're like, well, I'm doing what I'm always doing. I'm like, what are you always doing? Well, I work at home. I stay inside. I don't go anywhere. I'm like, the pentacle's not going to lift you up off of your ass and, put you in the lap of a woman. You have, if you really want, if this is something you're really wanting, if you want to go meet a woman, have a relationship, you have to go where people are. You have to make the action. It's just like the angels too. They're not going to do it for you. Magic is going to assist you. It's going to help you. But if you refuse to be active in what you say you want, then the magic's going to be stagnant. It's not going to work for you. They have to work together. And this was a big lesson for the angels with me and with other people as well. Understanding what we want and then moving to what we want is a very big thing. Spirits can be helpful, but they're not going to do it for us. Angels are not there to do things for us. They're there for the messenger and the assistance and the help. And we can seek that, but we have to be going the same direction.
Thank you.
Great
Frater.
wisdom.
Just one point that I would like to clarify. So you said that previous contact with the spirits empowering the pentacles is necessary. So that means not only the archangels, but also the subordinate spirits in the first and second pentacles of each planet.
Yes. Yeah. Contacting those, invoking those beings to specifically, when I do the pentacles now, I don't do a full evocation of the archangels. I invoke them. I ask them to be there. And after working with them, I have no issues with them saying, yes, I'm lending my assistance. But I specifically speak to the ones in charge of the pentacles, consecrate this, make it effectual. It's supposed to do this. Can you make it do this? And sometimes it's very simple and there's just a very agreeable yes. Sometimes they say, okay, the person that is getting this, they're going to need to do this with it. They're going to need to treat this, or they're going to have to do it's never very complicated, but some activity like show it to the sun on Sunday at some point, and maybe say a word, something. It's usually something like that. And as long as you're doing that, it'll be active and will continue to work for them.
Okay, so let's say you want to start working with Mars pentacles. First off, you have to do an evocation of the spirits of Mars under the authority of the archangel. So you wear the first pentacle of Mars, you do a full evocation, and after the full evocation, after you get permission from the subordinate spirits, then you can start building Mars pentacles. Is that how it works?
That's typically, yes, how you want to do. You want to get basically almost like the initiation, get familiar and then make it. They might even give you instructions if there's something different you have to do or something specific. It's a good way to learn first. And then after speaking with them, making them and then being able to call once it's all made. I have altars for each angel, for each planet that these pentacles go on, and they're called to that space. Everything's concentrated that space anyway, so it's like a funnel, like a line that they know exactly where to go. I know where it is, and the pentacles, so that it's there's no ambiguity there. And doing that first and then making them and having a space for that seems to be the best way.
Thank you. Very thorough answer. Thanks, Frater. How should you use a pentacle? Should you carry it around, like wear it as a necklace, or leave it at home, or leave it in your workplace? What do you do to use it?
Yeah, good question. A lot of these, the spirits say, simply have it on the person. Necklace is one of the easiest ways to wear, but some people either don't like them or something about the metal they don't like against their skin, and the spirits have told me it's fine. They should just have it in the pocket or on their person. But there has been instances where something is for business. And a great, really recent example, my wife got her master's degree. She was in school, she's a teacher, she teaches gifted and talented children. I made her a Mercury Pentacle from the veritable Key of Solomon to help with students. And she would wear it on Wednesdays when she was typing, and she's talking about it, the ideas are coming together, and she's writing her papers and everything. But sometimes it would be overload, and then she would hang the pentacle. She would keep it in her office, but she would hang it. We have a statue of Mercury in her office, and she would hang the pentacle there when she wasn't directly using it. And but she, it was always accessible. And even if she was in the office, she said she could still feel the resonance of that pentacle. So the pentacle stays. That's where it stays when she needs to work on something. So
yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Frater.
I have another question here that I told you before we start recording, is that why would an angel help humans? Because I say, the question was, I am an angel and I'm doing angel stuff in my angel place, and then at that given time, that I don't know if I work in the same time as humans, but at a human time, some magician make an evocation and then he interrupts me. Why would an angel help a magician to get a job, for example, or to get a better loved ones, or to be a better person, something like that? Have you ever asked them, why are they helping us? Why are they in contact to us, or something like that?
So in my book, in Gateways Through Light and Shadow, one of the first questions that I ask of, I think most of the angels is, what is your interest in human affairs? What is your involvement, and kind of why? And the answers I received, for one, were very beautiful and very unique from angel to angel. Another thing is as well that without doubt, some of these angels, and I think especially from Haniki's his experiences, he could probably attest to the same, that some of the angels seem very familiar with talking to human beings and working with human beings, and very interested in engaging, where some of the angels seem a little bit more remote, a little bit more foreign, and not hostile, but just not used to really engaging with human beings, at least on the levels that we're used to. And that's been my experience with some of these beings, that they're willing to speak. As far as being interrupted, when other people kind of ask this question, there really is a sense of they're not confined by time and space as we are, not by a little bit. So it is of no subjective thing that they are functioning perfectly well and doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, even though they're there speaking with us and answering questions. And they could be being invoked by people in different parts of the world, speaking and interacting very clearly, all without any kind of interruption, basically because they're not confined as a human being would be, where we really have at least a sense when we're in our waking consciousness. I would have to say we feel very kind of confined to one place, one time, one thing at a time. For instance, of things that we can do, not to get too off track, but even as a human being, if somebody's having trouble understanding that, even though we're talking and engaging and I'm answering questions, my blood's still working. I'm still breathing, even though I'm not thinking about breathing. All my internal functions, which is still me, human beings, as doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, even though I'm focusing on something else. If we can think about an angel as a big body, I'm sure it can be somewhat comparative to that. But as far as why they would help us and why they're interested in us, that to me has been one of my biggest mysteries. I consider myself fortunate to have some of the most incredible experiences with these beings, and not in an egotistical way, just I don't know how many people have had these kind of experiences in their lives, but for me they've been life-changing, and throughout my entire life so far, they're still predominantly the most incredible things I've ever witnessed. I don't understand why they would waste their time with me. I don't think I'm particularly intelligent as compared to a lot of human beings. I'm definitely not pious and spiritually and holy compared to most other people. When I compare myself to other people, I see a lot of better human beings than myself. So I don't understand why I was lucky that way, because I don't think is because I'm clever. There's a lot more clever people and better magicians than myself. It's not to be humbling. That's something that I ask myself, because I don't understand. But for whatever reason, they do. They're interested in how we treat each other. They're interested in how we're working in the world. They're interested on how we're sharing our story. And there has to be something to the spiritual source of where a lot of the stuff comes, that we are fractals, we are peace, we are pieces, we are small pieces of God experiencing himself. That story's been written all the time, but it doesn't move unless we move and do something with it, unless we act our story, unless we do our story. It may not seem very important. There's so many of us, and we have hard times, and sometimes it doesn't really feel like we're doing that much in the world. But I think it's perspective, and the angels and spirits, and not just the angels, they seem to be very interested in what we're doing and how we're doing and how it relates to other people. So I think there's a deeper mystery in there. I can't pretend to fully understand it, but they tell me it's important. So when I'm paying attention and I get back into my center, I try to live like it's important, even if I don't understand it.
At one point, several years ago, Solar Spirit told me that they helped us out of curiosity. It's like we are in a park and we are seeing a bunch of ants carrying some leaves, and suddenly one of the ants turns to you and say, "Would you help me carry my leaf?" And then as a human, you would look down to a small ant and say, "Why not?" He's amazed by how did this ant could talk to me. And that's why they were helping us. And maybe someone in the past discovered these keys and can talk to these giant beings of energy or something like that. I thought this idea was amazing, and I've been stuck with that for a long time. Henrique, please.
All right, so this is a bunch of questions related to the Olympic spirits from the Arbatel. We already know Frater Ashen has evoked all 7 of them through using the tools from the drawing spirits and the crystals. So basically, what is the difference in office when it comes to each planetary archangel and each Olympic spirit? To be more specific, let's say, what is the difference between the office of Aniel, of Venus, and of Hagit, her Olympic spirit? And also, can you say if the Olympic angels they fulfill petitions like the subordinate angels in the Key of Solomon or the Heptameron, or are they more focused on life guidance and ethical and moral values as the archangels are?
Good question.
Before answering this question, could you explain the hierarchy that Henrique already asked? The Olympic spirits, for the ones that are listening to us, They have no idea what is an Olympic spirit and the difference between an archangel. And could you talk a little bit about the hierarchy?
Sure. So Olympic, we're still talking about planetary. So we're talking about Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury and the moon, the seven primary planets, which are referred to often as the celestial bodies and spheres, and through which the archangels have been attributed. And for one, the archangels themselves, although through magic and through different systems and in Kabbalah, they've been associated with various concepts, and the planets being one of them. I've definitely come to understand that the archangels are in no way defined by them, like limited by them. So when we reach out to Haniel as an archangel of Venus, as being in Hebrew the joy of God that way, the archangel relates to us, communicates with us, and exchanges with us through that paradigm, through that lens, if you will, so that there's specific topics and specific energies being discussed and used, and so on and so forth. But to say that that is the only thing that the archangel is about, I think is a little presumptuous, and especially with archangels like Michael and such, and regardless if it's attributed to the sun or Mercury, I think it's simply a lens or a conduit of reaching a very vast and very potent energy. An angel, even if you will, I think is just kind of a concept of reaching to a being that goes quite beyond our understanding of what that all entails. But as far as the Olympic spirits or Olympic angels, they relate in the same way, or attributed the same way, as angels of the celestial spheres or the planets. And the Arbatel is the grimoire that deals with them specifically in their way, and you find their sigils and names in other works, but the Arbatel is the one that they're most referenced in. When my scryer, and I haven't really seen this with other magicians yet, they may have had the experience, but when we asked the Olympic angels, where did you come from? They shared stories with us of human beings throughout history in different cultures and in different places of the world that somehow exemplified the virtues of what the planet meant. And from what we could tell, they lived these certain kind of lives. So the human aspects of why the planets are even important to us, how they influence us, and the meaning that we associate with them, these people exemplified those virtues. And through story, what the angels told us is that the archangels came to them, and through basically a spiritual metamorphosis became the Olympic angels of those planets. So almost as if they were humans, and then their spirits became angels because of the interaction with these archangels. I think the stories are amazing, but I think it gives the kind of occult ideal that the Olympic angels are there to assist us in the specific ways of how, if we're intelligent, if we're savvy enough magicians, and we can see the hidden meanings, these angels can assist us into perfecting, heightening, strengthening the most positive virtues of their planets, or what they're about, their planetary virtues in our lives, for us to be successful in practical ways, but practical not just in materialism or in materials or even just actions, but practical in the sense that we become very adept in moving and structuring and acting upon our lives through the benefits of their office. And hopefully that's not too wordy. It's difficult to describe, but another way to say it would be they're very good at working with human beings to bring the blessings and all of the positive aspects of the planets through their lives on Earth. And how that differs, I think, from the archangels is that the archangels are a lot more vast in dealing with kind of broader spectrums and more kind of, shall I say, kind of universal perspectives of what these planetary powers mean.
Excellent. Thank you. So,
Ricky, ask the question again, because please.
all right. You want me to specify what I asked him?
Yes, just because I made a question before your question and he extended, so ask the question again, please.
All right. So what I asked him was basically the difference in office concerning the planetary archangels and the Olympic angels or Olympic spirits who are below the planetary archangels. And from what I understand, what Frater said is that planetary archangels, they are a different class of creatures who have never been human, and they are just angels. And they have very broad universal functions, very broad spectrum kind of functions. While as the Olympic angels, they were once humans who through merit, they were elevated to the status of angels, basically after death, if I understand correctly. So these Olympic angels, and correct me if I'm wrong, Frater, these Olympic angels, they are very, since they were once humans, their office is much more specific to bring their respective planetary blessings to humankind, and to teach you to act in accordance with each of the planetary virtues, and also to help bring these virtues to in concrete forms to your life. Is that it?
Yes, yep. It's an excellent way to say it. Yeah, each and they can work in tandem. You definitely can work with one another. I think it's just specifically how the magician works through and relates, and how it extends through the office and relationship with the spirit. And the Olympic ones seem to be at least a little bit more personable in the sense of understanding the persuasions and the movements of humans, because they have prior recollections or connections to what it was like to be human. So they understand how their energies angelic relate and funnel back down to being human and how it works within the physical world. So yeah, they think that's an excellent way. I do see that there's some questions in the chat. Did you want me to answer about the recipes for the planetary incense and such?
Oh yes, no, these are the selection ones. I will ask you. Each grimoire has a different recipe for planetary incense. Which one do you recommend following? Yeah,
so if I actually give, I think 3 different accounts in my first book, Agrippa's and the Heptameron, and I think the other one's like from Turiel or something, and I've experimented with all of them, and I've actually mixed some of them that seem most agreeable. So if I'm being honest, I would say to experiment. Agrippa's seems to be fine, but I do like to mix some of the elements or ingredients, I should say, from other grimoires. And I'm very fond of making my own concoctions for the planets and just see which one seems to work best. So without just choosing this one's better than that one, I would say experiment and see which one works for you.
Yeah, these questions were because we put in the closed group that we were interviewing you, and the guys went crazy. That's why they are so specific. In case of an evil spirit invades your ritual, what kind of rite do you recommend of exorcism or banishment? Because Enrique said in his interview that the ritual of the lesser pentagrams just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's usually kind of
very ineffective. It's just very weak. You can't count on it.
What would be a good banishment ritual?
And yeah, using that like during that's not something I would do either. The nice thing is that most of the Solomonic grimoires already answer that question. They have parts in the grimoire about what to do if a spirit is hostile or is under the guise of something else. For example, drawing spirits, into crystals, it starts out with the exorcism and the binding that if a false spirit is, somehow appears, that it's going to be bound and it has to answer truthfully. It has to answer the questions and swear by, the blood of Christ, basically, that it is the spirit that the magician's intending to call forth. In all of my years, I still have not gotten a spirit that said, "Oh, you caught me. I'm not this spirit. I'm some other spirit." Not during ritual. It just hasn't happened. I've dealt with all kinds of spirits outside of ritual that I've had to get rid of. But in the case that one does invade the ritual, there should be a binding conjuration for the spirit right there, and bind it to either answer and talk to you like, what are you doing here? What is your name? What is your purpose for doing this? Are you going to be helpful or not? If it refuses to speak with you, you should bind it and be able to, to force it out and stuff, to banish it completely from the place. I mean, it's a basic Solomonic ritual. There's many recipes for binding and exorcising a spirit that is in your home or in a place that shouldn't be there, when you're not in the midst of ritual. But there are many formulas to be found. The fourth book, but even the Goetia and even drawing spirits in the crystal, there's methods to be able to banish a spirit.
And they have their other questions. I would like rather to talk about your books, because most of these questions I've seen, they are in the books. They just have to read them. So I'd like you to talk to us. What was your first book, and what's it about, and what can we expect from your books?
Well, the first book that I wrote, it began as simply of field notes that oceans. We had gotten together in a group and we were very much interested in the Jupiter sphere of things. We were trying to get more established as the sphere of Jupiter does, but we decided to, at least some of us were interested in the art of drawing spirits into crystal. At it, I'm like, this is, as far as Solomonic methods of evoking spirits go, it's one of the most simple and straightforward. It's got pretty much all of its instructions can be, seen on one page. The tools are a little complex to make, but as far as the process and everything is quite simple. There's no real lengthy drawn on invocations and such in order to get the spirit to appear. It's pretty straightforward. So I wanted to see if I could make it work. And myself and I think a couple other magicians tried this. Rufus Opus is one of the other ones, and he's got a book called Seven Spheres. He did it in a different way. For myself, I wanted to see if I could make it work by following the instructions as closely as I could, as absolutely closely as I could. So I did, and I just started writing down everything that I was doing. And once I got all my tools built and my wand and the pedestal and the circle and the materials that this art talks about, I tried to experiment. And this was after the Almadel wax experiment. So I was feeling confident that I might be able to get something to appear. I began with Saturn, and Archangel Saturn, for whatever reason, just seemed like the place to begin. And I had a pretty profound experience. I saw not just the angel in the crystal, but I saw other things appear in the crystal that were being shown to me. The feeling in the room, everything, it was pretty powerful. So this art is effectual. I think I'm onto something here. So I started recording my experiences and my interactions with the angels. And one of the other magicians in the group was already a published author. And he's like, "This is amazing. You need to get this published." And I was like, "Well, I'm not a writer." And he said, "Yes, you are." He's like, this is a good one." So I tried editing it and putting it together in more published form, and I submitted it to a publisher through Nephilim Press. And I think that was 2013, and that's when my first book became published, was just my understanding of the art of drawing spirits into crystals, how I practiced it, and what I learned from it. And that was my first book. So anybody who is interested in this art, really wants to practice this art, like Niki, I mean, he came, to me, and I was still pretty fresh and just having my experiences and doing this, but he was very serious, and he was like, I want to learn this. And I'm like, well, I'm not, much of a teacher, this kind of thing. But he was like, no, I'm really serious about this. I'm dedicated. So we corresponded quite a bit, and he would talk about, he even sent me his scrying exercises, because learning how to scry, being able to look into a crystal or a mirror or something, it takes practice. Unless you're a natural seer that way, it takes practice. And he would work on it, and he would share, this is what happened, or nothing happened, or I saw this, or so it was kind of a working process. But that's for people who are interested in the art. That's what this book is for. I wanted to share with people who might be interested to try to do the experiences like I did and see what they experienced. And it's definitely been like being able to converse with him, and when he writes and says, oh my gosh, we did this experiment and we saw this, and this is what I experienced. To me, that's been the greatest I guess feedback, and made everything worthwhile. It just makes my with joy when other people get to experience this and go about the art and their way, and sharing these experiences as well. That's why I wrote the book. So it's neat to see.
It's great. You have another one, the one that was the hardcover, the second book. What is it about?
So my second book, Gateways Through Light,
yes.
Through Light and Shadow. That is the complete record of over 2 years of me working with a scryer, where I do all the evocations of these angels, but with somebody else in the circle with me, and actually somebody directly speaking to the angels while I'm doing the ritual and summoning the angels, what they experience, what they look like to them, when I ask questions and stuff, how the angel responds to them, and all of this is recorded. It's kind of a big magical adventure, because I take him through basically the hermetic and ceremonial magic initiations and process, where I take him through the elemental realms of earth, air, fire, and water, and what those beings teach us and what they say, and then what the experience is like for him when he goes into those realms astrally, and also doing some paranormal investigations where we try to speak with some ghosts and some spirits, and what that's all about. And then the planetary archangels, I ask them very, very specific questions and record the answers exactly as the scryer told me in real time, because they were audibly recorded, and I simply write them down. They're transcribed actual experiments of the archangels, of different magical experiments that the angels taught us about, of making certain magical items, of getting a house spirit into a human skull and being able to talk to that. I have a spirit in a human skull that is my magical teacher and advisor for the last 7 years. And they telling us how that should be done, but a lot of what the spirit in the skull taught us and informed us. And so those angels, the super celestial angels, all of the Olympic angels, in all the questions we asked and exactly what they said, those are all my.
That is basically a modern John Dee's diary.
That's what Dr. Stephen Skinner says. He writes the foreword. to that book, and that's what he mentioned. And it was very exciting because that's exactly what I was hoping to do. Is he's a very talented magician, but he's in a different system, and I wanted to get somebody's perspective that didn't really know a whole bunch of what this kind of magic was about, but whatever they said, whatever the experience, I recorded it down, and that's what the book.
Yeah, probably they will be studying your books in 300 years, 400 years from now. I believe that. Enrique, you asked the last question, and then I will ask the most important question, that is, how can we find him? So ask your last question.
All right, so this is concerning the Goetia. All right, so Frater, do you think the spirits of the Goetic spirits are dangerous, and why? If so, why? Also, do you think the protective equipment is necessary? Basically, the circle and the sword and other protective measures, or you think they can be just left out? Also, what do you think, in your experience, is the limit to the power of the Goetic spirits, to what they can do?
Some pertinent questions. So within with the Goetia, especially the Lemegeton, the spirits in the Lemegeton, without doubt, I do, not all of them, but I do think some of them can have the potential to be quite dangerous. And a lot of times not dangerous in the way that we would either imagine, or what, movies or something else would tell us, like coming in and possessing us, or tearing us to pieces or something if our circle wasn't made right. Not necessarily those type of scenarios, but from my understanding and working with quite a number of them now, I haven't worked with all of them, and I don't plan to ever work with all of them. There's some I'm not interested in working with. The number I have worked with, they seem to be powers. If you haven't, I think a lot of them, if not most of them, are ancient deities or god forms in some parts that were quite pronounced at times in human history in different parts of the world. And the reason they seem to enjoy, at least embody, the type of influence and authority that they have in their particular field of interest, like say, if not their office. But their relations to human beings are very interesting, about how they use their influence and use the powers of their office and who they are to move things that in greater categories. That is to say, most of them don't seem very interested or have any concern about possessing one person one time anywhere, no matter their standing or political influence. I don't think I haven't really seen that, but they are interested in kind of how their office can manipulate and sway larger bodies of people, groups, social groups, cultural groups, maybe even national groups. At some point, they're interested in how those things are moving and how certain things can be manipulated. And I think they're interacting with people, with magician, has to be cautious, because they have their own office, they have their own things that they're doing, which may not be in the interest, and a lot of times is not in the interest of the magician. And there's a little bit of tug there. Not all the time, and definitely not with all the spirits. There are some spirits in there that I've spoken to, that I continue to speak to, and I have yet to see any hint of any kind of malice in their undertaking. Granted, I've been doing it traditionally, and they're bound not to work against me or my family or anything else, and that's why those structures are in place, which is kind of leading into your next question. So I have summoned them or evoked them out of the context of the projective and legal parameters of the Goetia. So I don't know, but they've been very agreeable in working with me, and have not, from my account, been trying to find any loopholes, and seem genuinely interested in actually helping stances, and more interested in, again, the positive exchange between people rather than trying to tear things apart in an evil way. So that's been interesting. But I do think caution, and also the magician being very, very clear about what they're hoping to, what that might look like. Because I think one of the biggest dangers is imagination. Imagination for the magician. They think, oh, the spirit says they can do this for me. Okay, I'll ask them to do this, and this is going to happen. That's usually naivety on the part of the magician, and can lead to trouble. And it's usually their fault, is because, well, as John King says, they ask for something stupid. Getting what you want while wanting something stupid is one of the dangers of working with the Goetia. And but that's the learning material of the magician. The circle, the wand, the vestments, all of these things, now that I've been doing this for so long, protection is only one piece of it. It can be, and what even protection means, it's gone from like, yeah, this is going to protect me from the spirits trying to harm me. No, a lot of spirits really, from what I've seen, they're not interested in trying to harm the magician in the first place. Even if they're not really happy about being called, it doesn't seem like they're really looking for ways to hurt or necessarily cause trouble. But what they're about, what their office is, again, may not be harmonious with you and your destiny, what's going on. And if you try to force certain things together, it's like chemicals in a lab. You don't have your gloves and your glasses on. It's not that chemicals are mad at you, but they might explode because you're mixing stuff that shouldn't be mixed. We're talking about energies here. The circle is a focal point. It's a construct. The universe, that also helps the spirit identify and, I think, come into contact with you properly, even beyond it being something for protection. Only the vestments, the symbols, the hexagram, all of these things are construct of pattern and of direct purpose of pattern, construct, and that's the word, but proper construction. Even if our thoughts, our mind, and our heart aren't in the best alignment to dealing with the spirit, these things are meant to smooth and correct out some of those edges. I don't know if this is coming across correctly, but I'm starting to see things very different. First thought about them, and it really does seem to be this way. Is the sword necessary? I usually don't have the sword for Goetia. I brought it in once when I was kind of really scared about what this spirit might do, because it was a dangerous one. I usually do have the wand, but I have the wand for all of my Solomonic working, so it's something I'm accustomed to. But the incenses, all of these things, again, are components that are hopefully in agreement with the spirit, with your intentions and what you're trying to do, and with the exchange that you're trying to form and have happen. That's what all of these things are for instance, to the incense, to the timing. You're trying to get everything on track so that all the energies and communication is going the same way. There's going to be things that vary out. Some of the words we pronounce are improper. Some of our emotions are not quite correct. There's inconsistencies. Solomonic magic is meant to help cover, protect, and kind of buffer against these mistakes that we just are not aware of, and hopefully make the exchange go as smoothly as possible.
That's a great answer. And the most important questions of all, is how can we find you? And if you have any courses, how can we buy your books?
So I believe all my books are on Amazon. You can simply buy them through there or through the publisher, either Nephilim Press or Azoth Press. Those are my books. Facebook is the best way to reach me, and it's my platform. I've tried making other websites and blogs, but I can't keep up with everything. All of my orders, all of my classes, online courses are through Facebook, and I've just kept it there because everybody seems to be there working through that platform. So I've got 4 magical courses on Facebook, one through Drawing Spirits into Crystals, one for Goetia, one through Almadel, and one through just establishing skills of the ceremonial magician, like very basic things that aren't even confined to ceremonial or Solomonic magic. So all of those are available through there and people can find me through that at Frater, Ashen, Chassan at Facebook.
All right, I'll get the address with Henrique. For those of you who are listening to us now, they will be here in the description of the video. So, Frater,
Marcelo, excuse me. Can I squeeze in one last question? Very quick.
I don't know if he wants, okay. He's
Very
like
good.
the angel we're summoning now.
This is just a very quick one, Frater, okay? One thing I've noticed in drawing spirits into crystals, once you've made the archangelic sigil and the corresponding planetary metal, and you actually go through the full evocation, one of the things that happened has been completely unpredicted, which is when I handle the metallic sigil, I can feel it's kind of become alive, and I don't need to have my senses open to feel it. You know, you just handle it and you see there's a type of glow to it. Can you speak a little more about it for those who intend to practice from drawing spirits into crystals?
Sure, and I think that's an excellent observation, and you're exactly right. And another reason for why people talk about, magical implements and them just being props or just being, things and associated, having materials with you, and when you actually had occasion and those spirits are in proximity or in somehow, some way in concentrated proximity to where you are, and there's interaction, there's so much exchange. You may have a magical circle, but even as my house spirit said, that you are not completely buffered from a spirit being there at all. Those things are there with you, and there's exchange happening. The spirits or the circle's meant to at least modify it a little bit or control it a little bit, but there is definite exchange happening. So even, your lamen, when that angel is near in proximity, and those symbols and the material and everything else are with you and in that proximity, without a doubt, those things resonate almost like tuning forks of the same pitch and everything, kind of agreeing with each other. It becomes consecrated even without saying, will you consecrate this? Just as is the magician themselves. Why I say evocation is in fact an initiation. Another person cannot initiate you, I don't think, truly into a magical path, and especially not into a spiritual or celestial sphere. One of the beings from that sphere has got to be there, and simply being in contact, being successful as an evocation, things will change with you. You might not understand, I still don't understand it, but things will change, as I'm sure you can definitely attest to it. You as yourself as a person become changed. The lamen changes. Your wand now becomes a magic wand in reality, because those divine forces were actually there, actually working, and those things came together. So that's another thing. What I love about these systems is, things will change, and just like you said, your lamen, it's going to find you hold that or touch it. It's going to resonate, and parts of you are going to be able to remember exactly how you felt during that time and what that spirit was about. And it's wonderful, but that's when I became careful, and I wrapped those things up and I keep them and I don't let other people handle them and everything because they're sacred and truly consecrated. And I try to only use them when you're trying to call about those types of energies because it's active now, it's activated.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Frater. And now I would like to tell you that you have friends here in Brazil and in Japan. And if you ever want to travel,
I'm a big fan of, I've been to Japan before.
we will take you to our spirit's house and to some Umbanda and Kimbanda practitioners, so you can see how we handle spirits here.
I would love to experience that. I'd love to visit Brazil someday.
Well, you have a lot of friends here now, and people, when we play this interview for them, you have a fan club here, for sure. Thiago, you want to say some last words?
No, just thank you, the amazing class.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here and speak with you all. Thank you.
All right, Thales.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks so much, Frater Ashen. Was very clarified our interview. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Robson.
Thanks for the class. And now I search on the Google for your course. I like your review.
That's great.
Yeah.
Henrique, last word.
I think it's always a big privilege to hear from someone who actually walks the walk and who has a very good grasp, I'd say even mastery of all those systems he talks about, because it's very rare. You know, an experienced Solomonic magician is a very rare person. So I would just like to thank, thank you on behalf of everyone who is going to watch this interview, Frater. Hopefully, we'll have more colleagues practicing the Solomonic tradition, and hopefully learning from you. And well, I just hope that when you get some time, you also do a course on the Key of Solomon.
But you would like to say last words to the people who are watching. There will probably be a lot of new practitioners after this interview, because when we interviewed Henrique, it was a blast. A lot of people said, "Wow, this is great, this is nice," and then we got to talk to you, that is his teacher, and now I believe there will be a lot of new practitioners, as he said. And thank you so much for being with us. It was a privilege. Really, it's very nice. We say here that we love to interview people whose, when you speak, your eyes glow with enthusiasm for the truthfulness of what you say. So I love to interview people like you. Thank you so much for this. It was a wonderful evening.
It's definitely my pleasure, and thank you so much. And to thank Henrique for introducing us and having me on. Like I said, I've been just so proud. My heart swells to see how the art is going on, being able to share people who actually do it and live it, and that's amazing to see, and has made it all worth it. But yeah, I'm happy. Anybody who's interested, like truly interested, and wanting to learn and practice, love to hear from them. I know there's questions in the chat. If I didn't get to those questions, they can email me or text or message me on Facebook, and I'll try to get back to them. But yeah, it's definitely my pleasure, and look forward to hopefully speaking in the future.
All right, thank you. E para você que acompanhou a gente, então não esquece, os links estão aqui embaixo. Segue o canal, dá like e a gente se vê aí no próximo Bate-Papo Mayhem.